Welcome, Natale. Thanks for joining today's podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jessica. I'm excited to be here.
So, where are you calling in from for the
So I'm
listeners?
current, so I'm currently in Toronto right now, based out of Toronto. Relocated here for grad school, and I'm working part time at a co-working space here.
Oh, cool. And why are you working at this co-work space? What's the fun of that?
So over the years, I've been very interested in working at collaborative spaces.
Hmm.
So spaces that bring individuals together and try to foster community. So when we look at today's society, there's a lot of open source happening online. So a lot of engagement, a lot of crowdsourcing happening virtually. And I think I'm interested in looking at what we can do if that was brought into reality. And looking at not just building these crowdsourcing communities, so these communities that sort of come and then dismantle very quickly, but building communities that, like where people really begin to invest in each other, and there's sort of this long lasting sort of commitment, connection, and collaboration that happens. So physical space has been something that I'm really fascinated by, looking at a physical space as an opportunity for people to come together, engage, and begin to influence each other, to co-create together, and empower one another towards creating change within their localities.
Oh, great. Did you already see some things in the workspace or in the field you work with at the moment, that something that works to actually facilitate this engagement and connectivity and commitment between coworkers?
Yeah, so I guess initially when I started out, it was just we were just taking over properties, and it was sort of open engagement. We would have workshops there, and we would facilitate sort of like meetings, and but co-working for me became the most interesting component. So in 2013, I was based in Hyderabad, and we were began experimenting with an organization called Unlimited Hyderabad, which is the sister company of Unlimited India, which started one of the first co-working spaces in India called Bombay Connect. And the co the a founder of one of their sister companies, Unlimited Hyderabad, decided to come and try to experiment with the concept at a workspace, at a property that we had taken over, that we were working out of in Hyderabad. And it was really interesting. It was the first time that I'd heard about co-working, and why I really liked it was that it brought together people that were already working on specific projects as entrepreneurs. In this case, they were social entrepreneurs, and facilitating meetings around that. I felt like it really created sort of a focus point. When we think change makers, what specifically are we talking about? And for me, co-working brings together change makers who are specifically entrepreneurs, who are building products and projects that are self-sustainable, and then facilitating connections around that. And I think Host to Transform was something that I discovered when I had relocated to Bangalore and was working on a project of building three co-working spaces.
Wow.
And Host to Transform, I thought, when we did a workshop with them and brought the entrepreneurs together and began doing events around figuring out what people's needs were and how everybody could help meet those needs, I feel like I really found my niche. I was like, wow, working with entrepreneurs, but also facilitating ways for these entrepreneurs to figure out how to help each other, meet each other's needs, and also keep each other uplifted. I felt like that sort of began streamlining the kind of communities that I'm interested in building and how I want to build with those communities.
Wow, that sounds like a beautiful niche. I think we
Yeah.
have some commonalities there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually also building those kind of community like spaces in organizations that already exist. So you could work on crowd companies, getting some entrepreneurs together and make them flourish and cooperate together. But I think, yeah, you could also do it in already existing organizations to get those people more engaged and work more effectively. Do you think that, well, in this specific case, maybe the hosted transform tool could be effective in existing organizations as well? or would you say only co-work spaces?
I think the principles in Host to Transform could be valuable in any corporation and any organization. For sure. I mean, hands down. I mean, we could, for example, the first facility in Hyderabad, we were very arts oriented. So we'd have a lot of arts events and artists as well. And one of our floors was devoted to co-working and entrepreneurs. But do I think that that would have been valuable for us to have done a workshop like that, bringing our artists together, bringing our, our entrepreneurs together and facilitating one of the sessions that Host to Transform does? I think yes, because sometimes at that workspace there was a little bit of conflict, right? The artist would be making music or running, music shows, and we'd have entrepreneurs having meetings, and there was this conflict at times. And it would have been great if we could have, run one of these sessions and figure out, built more communication within the community, and facilitate that. Sometimes it's a lot harder than we think for individuals to go and connect with one another. And I think it's the responsibility of the community managers and the facilitators of the space to go and encourage people to connect. And that's because I think in every organization, people we're usually so work oriented or trying to get a project across that we don't really take the time to figure out what each other's needs are, and figure out how we can meet them. And also, I really love these games at House Transform where people find out what we have in common. So usually in these collective spaces, sometimes people's differences begin to conflict. These games are a really great way of getting people to remember, okay, what do we have in common? What has brought us to this facility? What do we have that I can give to someone else to support and help them? So I think Host to Transform could be, useful in many different scenarios. Even like I'm at my grad school right now. So my grad school is a program, a master's in strategic foresight innovation at OCAD University, and we're a design thinking program. So it's a very multidisciplinary program, several different individuals working on projects and working on innovation solutions. But I think there needs to be more, like it would be great if we spent more time doing these kind of activities together and getting to know one another better rather than just jumping into the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a coincidence. At the moment, I'm also lecturing at a business school. It's called, I have to say it right, IBIS, International Business Innovation Studies. And I'm actually incorporating the Host to Transform principles there as well. And I'm teaching facilitating to the toolkit towards the students to make it their own. And I can already see, they for them it's pretty easy to just absorb that. Maybe more easy than I see with adults. I don't know. It's or adults. I mean, senior people. They find it kind of maybe more. They feel more distance to the whole principle. I feel sometimes. So that's interesting. And for people that never have joined a session of Host to Transform, can you recall how you have experienced it or how it went in Bangalore, right?
Well, it was quite interesting when you dropped in, because we opened our facilities in Bangalore in around like November, and by January, one of our facilities was very full, and then going into February, March, a second facility began to be very full, and we began to have several individuals in our workspaces. And managing, like, initially it was just trying to get people to sit into the desks, but eventually the issue became about fostering community, and we did get a lot of feedback from our entrepreneurs about, like, hey, I'd love to meet with some of the other founders. Maybe we should start having meetings. Maybe we should start doing some games together. And what you discover about people that work in collaborative spaces is that they're working there because they like being around people.
Yeah.
So I began feeling this need to run community events, but I didn't know what to do. And one day I heard that you were like that Host to Transform was in Bangalore and that they had reached out to our co-working space. You showed up and started running these games that were perfect. I think was exactly what we needed. So one of the games consisted of, we started off with our team of community managers. You got us to stand in the circle. You had us sort of share things that we wanted to achieve in the space. And then each of us in the circle shared. So one person would share what they needed, and then every single other person in the circle would share how they could support that person to make that happen. Now, you would think at all of our team meetings that we would have done that already. But sometimes it's kind of like, you know, that doesn't happen, because every single person has different ideas and we don't really take the time to express and we begin to debate the idea rather than say, debate all aside, what can I do to make that idea happen? So, and figure out
The
sort of,
solution focus was there, the
yeah,
openness. Yeah.
exactly, solution focused rather than, yeah. So that was a great game. There was also this, you got us to stand around the circle and just sort of share what we were grateful about. Made us share sort of our first name, and then with the first letter of our name, we shared sort of a characteristic about ourselves, and we, shared sort of personal challenge. So you made it kind of personal as well. It wasn't just, about the work. We also started to get to know each other on a more intimate level, which I really appreciated. And then we went out into the co-working space, and it was I was a little nervous, and we went around to each desk and we tried to encourage people to come, play an activity. And it was great because we had so many people come and play, and come and engage. And I think I was really, grateful for you to come in. Sometimes it's hard as a community manager. We're invested in the community. We've built relationships. We're trying to maintain the reputation of the space. It's nice to have like a sort of an external individual to come in and then sort of give us the courage to go around and be like, hey guys, let's do this activity. And so we ended up clearing out our first floor, and we had a great, it was a great group of people came together, and you got them to play all these different activities. And I was so surprised that people were actually playing and that they were actually
Exactly.
enjoying themselves,
I was
right?
stretching my comfort zone immensely. There were also a lot of male kind of techies, if I can say it
Yeah,
like that, and they had their judgmental face on.
yeah.
And I can totally understand, and I'm also judging at the same moment. But I'm always, curious if people will really get involved. And yeah, 90% of the cases it actually happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then with some of the activities, you got them to get into groups and share 5 things that they had in common, and then you got them to share it with the group. Everyone got to hear sort of the 5 things that they had in common. You paired everyone up, and everyone again shared a need and how that need could be met. And it was one of the ones that left the biggest impression on me was these 2 individuals were talking, and literally one of the entrepreneurs just said, "I'm new to town, and I really want to play music, and I'm a great guitarist." And the guy that he had been partnered with was like, "Well, that's great because I'm trying to sell my guitar." So I was like, some of the connections had nothing to do with business. But, one of the things about these co-working spaces is you're also meeting a lot of entrepreneurs who are out of town, who've left their family and friends and are in a new city trying to build their business. And some of these connections can make it easier for them to integrate into the new city, and to build friendships. That's another thing. It's like not always about business. It's also just like about fostering and creating friendships in the facility, so that everybody feels at home. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was actually thinking, have you ever seen the movie The Secret? About the law of
Yes, I have.
attraction.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I
Yeah.
mean, you can have, I'm not saying it's the best movie ever, but the message there, the law of attraction and synchronicity, so things occur spontaneously, but on the right moment, on the right time. Yeah, I think maybe Host and Transform kind of in a positive way manipulates that process. It
Mhm.
accelerates it for synergy to occur in a faster pace than when you wouldn't have those 20-minute sessions. So
Yeah.
pretty cool. I was wondering because you also mentioned that me as an external person going there and unlocking the potential in the space, so to speak. I was wondering, do you think, because we have experimented with that in Amsterdam as well, and often the people from the cowork space itself do not really have the time to facilitate those sessions, as you have experienced yourself. You're always really busy.
Yeah.
Um, because I see a little challenge there, because I would love to see it really incorporated in the culture, and that's only possible when you, in this case, you specifically, adopt the tools. And well, maybe you're kind of a person that would love to facilitate those sessions. Others maybe not. How do you see that occur? Or maybe coworkers would love to facilitate those sessions. That could also happen. How would you see? How would you sustain that?
Well, I guess for me, I grew up doing a lot of improv.
Mm-hmm.
So, improv principles have really shaped the way that I engage and how I work in teams. And so when I saw that Host to Transform also incorporates these improv principles of the concept of yes and, um, I think that's really what makes it why I made it comfortable for me. I saw a lot of the games were also theater games.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think theater games are universally applicable and can be fun for anyone. I don't know if everyone will feel comfortable facilitating that,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that over time, if you build a community through through sort of shared leadership, so
Mm-hmm.
you have certain games, and then one person initiates and spends, does it bi-weekly or once a month. They run a game, and then have someone else run the
Yeah.
game the next week and build supportive environments. I think people can become comfortable leading these games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the challenge is, I guess, is that most entrepreneurs that come into workspaces, they're coming there to work on their business. And community managers, our responsibility is to facilitate the space, make sure that the community is happy. So the intervention point is to have community managers that realize the value of fostering community.
Mm-hmm.
So after that experience, like it's left an impression on me. So now I'm trying to figure out ways to carry that on in the spaces that I work in, or to encourage engagement and connection and collaboration. I reached out to you again to be like, hey, I'd love to learn how I could continue to do these kind of workshops. And I guess you've probably seen that, right? By going to different co-working spaces, you've probably gotten individuals that have been interested in carrying that
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
it just has to be incorporated at least, bi-weekly, and maybe more often
Mm-hmm.
in a space, to make more people comfortable playing these activities or leading these activities.
Yeah. Yeah, so because I think that triggered me. Like the community manager is responsible of facilitating the space. I really wonder if that's possible, in a sense that I think the people that work in the space also have to be responsible for that community to accelerate. I've met a lot of community managers by now, and often they're kind of, they find it really difficult to kind of approach the entrepreneurs, because they don't want to disturb them, because they pay a fee to be there, and they're kind of in this in between zone. And yeah, it's the same with organizations. You cannot just make one manager responsible for the whole space to be happy. Of course, it's his core business. However, I think it's the challenge for the manager, in this case also for you, to make the other people also feel responsible. So indeed, to get this shared leadership, yeah, responsibility going on.
Well, yeah, I guess it's when you say that, I think it is very true. Like the idea, like, so one of the projects I worked on, it was called Free Space in San Francisco, and there was a lot of burners behind the project, and so they used a lot of the principles from Burning Man when running the facility. So we had the property for 2 months, and the first month, when anybody walked in and they'd ask us, um, "What is this place?" we would be like, "Well, what do you think it should be?"
Mm,
And so
nice.
every single person that walked in was empowered to be a leader. and every single person was empowered and encouraged to contribute something to the space. And it was amazing, right? In 1 month, we had over 100 events of book readings. We had this one organization come in and do like bring in scraps and do like facilitate art. We had open mics. We had like a music night. We began to have this weekly yoga session, and all of these workshops are happening for free. And because of these workshops, it was increasing our footfall.
Mm-hmm.
We never knew what kind of events. Sometimes we had one of our events was like brought together a bunch of musicians. So it was a 3-story property, and our whole building, each floor we had like a music night and music show going on, and it brought in a huge crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember just loving that project because literally I came in on like the second day. I wasn't the main team that acquired the property, came up with the concept,
Mm-hmm.
but they immediately integrated me to the point that I felt like I was a part of the founding team. I was I could go and sit in with meetings with the founding team, and I was facilitating workshops, and I
Yeah.
was, so I think what you're saying is it reminds me of that. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it's how can we do that? Empower every single individual, because when
Yeah.
you do, things sort of happen naturally
Yeah.
without the managers having to
Yeah.
do everything.
And sometimes I'm a little bit in dispute with my, well, so called colleagues that do similar work as I do. And they don't believe in self steering communities or organizations or whatever you call it, because they feel you need leadership. You need one person that makes the decisions. Otherwise, it's not going anywhere. And I think there's not one, clear answer to that. There's a lot of factors that make it happen or not. And in that case of what's the name of the project of the Burning Man project you were working on?
It wasn't a Burning Man project. It was called Free Space. It was actually
Ah,
done for the National Month of Civic, or sorry, the National Day of Civic Hacking in the United States of America
okay,
back in June 2013.
okay.
Um,
Oh, that's
but
the year I went to Burning Man, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So yeah, and it wasn't like it was a Burning Man project, but there was several individuals that had been to Burning Man.
Yeah,
So they brought a lot of those principles
yeah.
to the ways that the space was managed. And
Nobody's in the spectator or only the art. Yeah, you're both. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it was amazing. I mean, little things like even someone coming in and painting on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
right? We always look for the physical and tangible, but someone that was also considered a contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, really love
And was
it.
there one person that made the decisions? Do you remember? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
just
so it was
curious?
founded by an individual named Mike Zuckerman,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a strong proponent of like third spaces and facilitating those kind of spaces in San
Yeah.
Francisco and across the world.
Okay. All right. So there is some kind of steering wheel behind it, right? It's not just randomly exists and then it's gone again. It's I'm just
Well,
searching for the amount of leadership you need for those spaces to happen naturally enough.
I think it takes it always takes a team to acquire the space
Mm-hmm.
and then be the stewards of that space and sort of make sure that the space opens at a certain
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
that
yeah,
we
yeah.
lock up, make sure that everyone's,
The
you
operational
know,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, the operational stuff.
Cool.
It took a connection to acquire the space in Bangalore. It took our founder, to be able to acquire the properties. You need those individuals who are, willing to take up that responsibility.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
And out of curiosity, because you also mentioned sustainable project is something that really thrives you. And do you also mean financially sustainable, or do you mean sustainability in the word of environment?
I mean, sort of financially sustainable,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, that's another interesting component. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, in order for any of like, so free space, when we the second month that we were open, we had to crowdsource in order to pay for rent, right? So we had to do a um, crowdfunding to get the funds to pay for that. But when I went to, when we were in Bangalore and I saw sort of the co-working concept, every entrepreneur that buys into the space literally ends up, investing in the maintenance of that space. So when you work with entrepreneurs and they're already sustainable and working on projects, and you bring that collective of individuals together, that too can also, um, ensure the sustainability of your project. Now, the space that I work with right now, I mean, it initially started with two individuals, and these two individuals just, they couldn't, they were two entrepreneurs and they couldn't afford to take up a big property and run their business. So they had to put, a word out to other entrepreneurs and see if they wanted to share space. And now they're in the business of acquiring shared spaces and facilitating those kind of spaces for entrepreneurs. Because it turned out there were so many people out there that were looking for
space.
For space. So
and
when
that's
you work
by membership fee, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So okay, getting back to the collective space and to make people flourish and engage and feel at home, but there should also be money in the bank. All that, as from your perspective as a community leader, or maybe you have some different words for that. What is, if you could name out one biggest challenge, what would it be for you from your perspective?
Well, so I'm a strong proponent of taking those 20 minutes or trying to get people to connect and play and engage. But it's challenging because, not many people see that as valuable or necessary. So, or no, people haven't experienced sort of adults playing games or activities. So, so sometimes you're kind of like the renegade in the space that's saying, "Hey, maybe we should take those 20 minutes and let's play an activity." And literally, like, I've been working in collaborative spaces since like 2012, and I've been like, either with smaller teams, and as the teams have grown, I've always been the voice that has been a strong proponent of engaging and utilizing play as a means of accelerating the growth of the organization. It's hard to convince people to see the value in that, and so
it's like emerging knowledge, right, or emerging experience. You know what they're gonna have a lot of fruitful experiences and probably resources that they can take out of it. But yeah, if they don't experience it, then you cannot force them, and it's kind of just first experience and then judge, please,
Yeah. Well, also I'll say this, it's kind of like, for me, it was just sort of an intuitive feeling that I began having. When I began, realizing when I look at my work life, and when I first started working, or even when I was in undergrad, or like as my life, as I was entering the professional realm, beginning to feel this need to play. And it wasn't so that I could be an actress or it was this need to engage and, so literally just to play. And
as a tool, not so much as a mean or for an end. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just to take that time out and do that for the pure joy of doing that. And sort of beginning to say, like, initially it was like, oh, let's play some games just to like take a break from the work. Let's do some games together. I think H.O.S.T to Transform so for me, H.O.S.T to Transform was great because they came in and sort of merged, look, we can play these activities and these games, and we can also achieve business goals and
Mm-hmm.
through that.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're utilizing games, but also for sort of strategizing and achieving milestones for companies.
Yeah.
So it sort of grounded it in a way where um, my need for creativity and was being met with the needs of the entrepreneurs to, stay in business
Yeah.
and and succeed. So I think Host to Transform really opened my eyes to how these things can coexist.
Yeah, that's cool. The other day, there was also a community leader that told me, yeah, it can actually prevent organization from getting bankrupt. Because bankruptcy is also when people are really stressed or are fearful, working in an organizational culture that is not open and really inwards looking and focus on the things that they are where they're scared of often happens, right? So you need to break free from that. So I think that's an interesting point you just made. That it has a purpose. It's the fun bit is great, but it's not only the purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, nowadays we also really focus on agility. So get agile, sometimes we say, and we have a framework where the A is standing for adaptability, the G for generosity, the I for intuition, like you beautiful said, the L for leaping into new experiences, and the E for empathy. So people empathizing with themselves and with the other, and from that space, new things arise. Um, because if I say play, I feel there's more walls coming up, especially with the
Yeah.
left brainers. So that's why
Yeah.
I choose, yeah, the word agile, get agile, because then you can create and seize new opportunities for your business to grow or to change, to transform actually. And do you resonate with that if I say agile?
Um,
Get the space
I
more
understand.
flexible?
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that certain words can be, perceived in certain ways. So yeah, I think again, it goes back. I think that Host to Transform is literally, for me, has really, thought it through and has made activities uh, appealing for individuals that, for an adult, um, consumer base. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think agile is a great word because it is about being flexible for sure, right? It's about being able to sort of pivot and if you're not willing to do that in reality, why don't we, do that in sort of this through an activity?
Mm-hmm.
Even just thinking about, okay, what could I do differently with my product or business?
Yeah.
And what can the people at this event or activity do to help me, you know,
Yeah.
do something different with my company? And just
Yeah.
explore that even just in conversation,
Yeah.
if not in application.
Yeah, you can by that you can validate your product or service, like on a product and service level, but you can also validate your assumptions about another person. Like 2 days ago, there was a session hosted in Brazil, actually, in the city Extrema. I don't know if you know it. It's near San Paulo, I think. And
Yeah.
there was long story short, there was a woman in a municipality and they want to have a project going on and with a lot of stakeholders, and there's a lot of biasness about one and the other, also judgments. And there was one woman that had a beautiful reflection about herself and the project in this space. And suddenly everyone shifted from judgment to empathy towards her, because she was, I don't know, she was physically really a big woman and maybe a little bit slow and slack, but her mind was really fresh and on the spot when she actually shared her ideas about the project. So I really love that too. You go beyond your judgments and you can validate your own thoughts about another person or projects. So yeah, that ring the bell when you were saying about pivoting. You can actually pivot um, yeah, your ideas about a person, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's another interesting thing about for me when I was working out in Bangalore at Beehive. It was interesting because when I was in the facility and entrepreneurs were coming in, I had this perception that, these were young millennials. Maybe they were out of college and they were building their business. And I was, it really took time for me to get to know each of the entrepreneurs and realize, some of them had previously been working at Goldman and Sachs. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
were recent graduates from Harvard. We had this other young woman who had got her MA from Cambridge and relocated back to Bangalore to work on her product, like this water purification product. We had this other company from one of the biggest software companies in the world, Tipco, that they had left that job and were building a product. So I like totally saw that. I had all these preconceived notions in my head about what kind of individuals were walking into this collaborative space. Had I not had that conversation and said, "Hey, like,
Mm-hmm.
what does your company do and what were you doing before you came here?"
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have ever realized what a talented group of people that were in my midst.
Yeah.
What that has taught me is to continue to engage. Even when you're at a party or you're at a networking event and you see someone, you don't know why, go talk to them
Mm-hmm.
if you feel this connection to them. Because once you start conversing with them, you might realize that they do something similar to you, that they could be a potential business partner. They could potentially support you in a project that you're trying to build. And you you never know that unless you make those conversations. So yeah, I've been suggesting that we try to do similar activities at the co-working space that I'm working at now. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the reasons that I'm suggesting that is to create effective networking and looking at the importance of networking for the
Mm-hmm.
success of companies.
Yeah. And go beyond what do you do, you know?
Yeah.
Why do you do what you do? That's way more interesting, I think.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
already getting fed up me saying that, but I just love to say it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, to wrap the conversation up, what are your best wishes for, yeah, the things you are working on? So maybe that's business spaces to flourish. What are your best wishes for
Well,
it?
I guess my what I'd love to see in these co-working spaces is that, so where we are right now is that you do have several individuals and entrepreneurs who are seeing the value of working under common space.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, there's still, and it still has sort of that crowdsource, crowd funded kind of feeling to it. So it's like all these individuals are coming together and we're maintaining the rent and we're paying, maintaining our sustainability in that way. But we're not seeing like community, and we're not seeing
Mm-hmm.
individuals realizing that we are a collective and our survival as companies is deeply interdependent, and that if we see ourselves not as just a single entity or a single company, but as companies that through connecting with the other companies in the building, and this does happen naturally, you see some companies
Mm-hmm.
beginning to work on collaborative projects, and so for me, it's like when you see that happening, it's like imagine the whole facility were to
Mm-hmm.
light up that way, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody felt this sort of connection and need to ensure the survival of every single individual that walked into the property. No matter what situation you were in, once you entered the space,
Mm-hmm.
you would become a part of an ecosystem that was invested in ensuring your survival. So,
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing in entrepreneurship right now is you're seeing some companies move up, the ladder and becoming more financially sustainable. And the companies that turn back and say, what can I do to reinvest in other individuals so
Mm.
that they too can also survive and they too can
Beautiful.
be a
Yeah.
part of the process. So, for me, I'd love to see these sort of collective activities and games and fostering networking and fostering the exchange of what people's needs are and how people can what kind of gifts people have to support those needs.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's about ensuring the collective survival of every individual, no
Mm.
matter what skill level you're at or what place you are in your business. Because for me, entrepreneurship is a gateway
Mm-hmm.
for individuals to, you know, self actualize or
Yeah.
express whatever gift that they have that they want to share with the world. But they may not have all the skills that they need in order to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that. So I just want to see more entrepreneurs supporting each other. So
Yeah, I love what you say about kind of the generations, the mature generation helping the younger generation again. Because what I see when there's a lot of people starting to get in business and everything is new, there's more a way of thinking in scarcity than abundance, which I can imagine. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle now. I'm moving up in that sense, if I
yeah,
can, if I can place myself somewhere.
yeah,
But I also understand, it's pretty hard. It's a different lifestyle. You need a different mindset. You cannot be too hard on yourself. You cannot be too hard on others. But yeah, if things do not work out and your money is not on the level and what's your life expenses are, things are getting pretty difficult for people to still, feel like, oh, I can share everything with the world. And sometimes I feel that stress a little bit in co-work spaces, kind of, ooh, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think it's the same in big companies, actually. And I personally, I agree with you, collective survival, but also for companies that exist as well, the bigger companies, because before you know, a co-work space is just repeating, what happened before with the big companies, and becomes a survival of the fittest in a sense. And I think, we would like to prevent that, if I'm in tune with you.
yeah. And also because I think like the idea of like small businesses, especially and we're leaving a time of where multinational corporations have really, you know, shaped our economy. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, and that's something, fascinating that I saw in India, where you saw people leaving jobs at like Google,
Yeah,
Microsoft. These are some of the biggest, companies
very
in the
cool to
world.
see.
And so for many of the upper middle class in India, the aspiration was to work, Deloitte, work for the biggest American multinational corporation that they could find. That was
Yeah.
the highlight of their careers. But what was fascinating is to see that these individuals that were able to achieve that, having this desire to leave
Mm-hmm.
and begin their own small businesses. So this shift of individuals who want to start their own businesses is kind of like this pioneering shift.
Yeah.
And so it, like you said, it's not completely stable. And so in that case, it's so important for the collective to support each other, especially all the individuals that have decided to cross over
Yeah.
and become a part of these small businesses. We People supporting multinational corporations or supporting the way the economy functions right now is vast and large,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
The alternative is very, very small. Like even like sharing our customer base. Like why
Mm-hmm.
are if we built a collective customer base that began to purchase within our ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
a trust was built,
Mm-hmm.
that creates a shift,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that would be the scariest thing for most people to share, right? Is our sales,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people that I get business from.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. So
Yeah,
these,
it really resonates with me. I'm
yeah,
trying to cooperate even in the moment when I just started,
yeah,
with trainers to do similar stuff. But you can always identify differences between one and the other. So if I'm the host to transform person, with this kind of leads, and other people are really jumping into the improvisation theater, then I would just, I already have potential customers. I could just give to them because, this is not my main focus at the moment. It's part of what I do. But I'm not per se an improvised theater actor or only teaching improv people. So yeah, I as long as you know where you want to go, because if you want to grow in a specific area, you should really focus on that and give the rest to others. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
I mean, I think even if I look at our facility that I'm working at right now, I don't see a lot of like overlap. Everyone's doing something different. So literally what I see instead
wow.
is I'm like, oh, imagine if this organization helped this organization do this, and if this organization helped. So when I walk people through a tour of our facility, I say, okay, what do you do? Well, here, let me show you a bunch of organizations in this building that could potentially facilitate and support the survival of what you're trying to do.
Wow.
So that's what I see. I'm like, wow, look at this collection of individuals.
Yeah.
They could all, if they all realized that they could, if they all did business with each other.
Yeah, just cooperate. Yeah, there's sometimes
Um,
games for that too, to get that light bulb moment to accelerate that. I will send it to you for sure. Once we did a game, and then I saw, and I think it was even in Beehive in Bangalore, that we had like an HR group, and we had like finance group, and we had IT
yeah,
group. I'm like, look, guys, we're already there. What are we
yeah,
doing? Why are we so stressful? Let's share. You know,
yeah,
an HR
yeah. Like,
person would never, start designing stuff, right? And most probably his or her customer needs design as well. So, yeah, for me, sometimes I'm just amazed how people can look in the tunnel only. Yeah.
well, it goes back to the whole idea of like synchronicity, and also this other term that's being utilized lately about open space. So this idea that everyone that's showed up is supposed to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody has something valuable to contribute,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's like not a coincidence that we've all been attracted to whatever facility that we've been attracted to and decided to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Host to Transform is a great tool to sort of begin to explore and allow people to realize like, oh wow, there's a lot more in common here. And actually our commonalities and what we do in common, it doesn't threaten my survival at all. Actually, it actually provides for my
Mm-hmm.
survival. So I should open up more and listen more and engage and co-collaborate.
Yeah.
So
Why don't we change it into collective abundance or something?
yeah,
Because survival sounds really stressful, and
yeah,
like the Darwin kind of
yeah.
metaphor. So maybe
Well,
collective abundance.
abundance. Well, that's the whole idea about the
Yeah.
sharing economy, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. At the heart of the sharing economy and the heart of unleashing compassion capital is the idea that we live in
Nice.
a very, very abundant world, right? Because what's interesting is I feel like, yeah, like during the recession, there we began to feel this very strong sense of, oh my God, like economically we're in a very, horrible place. And then, you have people like Charles Eisenstein who wrote, Sacred Economics,
Mm-hmm.
talking about how actually no, like we live in a really abundant world. Like we have so many things to share. And
Mm-hmm.
though financially we're in a pretty tight place, there are so many other things that we can share with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we still live in a very, very abundant world. And I think that's sort of the proponents of like the project in Hyderabad, my friend who runs this facility called Roots,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that he decided to share his property for free with the community. He took over his four-story property in Hyderabad
Nice.
and said, I'm going to share this with the community because I believe that sharing this with the community will spark the desire for individuals to share other things with each other. And it did,
Wow.
right? We had a lot of interesting things like, musicians turned one room into like a music room, and we had musicians dropping off their music instruments. We had musicians recording for each other,
Mm-hmm.
video guys offering to videotape, do music videos for free. So that's like a small example. Like, yeah, like these open spaces can really reveal the abundance, what we as a community have.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and when people are encouraged to share and engage in the space, you can begin to unleash that. So yeah, I think abundance is actually is a perfect word for it. Like unleashing the abundance in the space.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Natal or Natalia or Natalie. Depends on
Yeah.
which continent you maneuver. Thank you so much for having this conversation podcast, and I'm sure we will talk soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep you up to date with how things go with the new co-working space that I'm working at. Um, so yeah,
Sure. Thank you very much. Have a great
thanks.
day. Ciao,
You
ciao.
too. Bye. Take care.